Hope all is well. So we're continuing our Indisputable Truth book series. We are on page 90 in the third edition of the book. We're on the summary of proofs. So just to summarize what we were just doing, the past couple of classes, we proved God exists, and we basically, we disprove the other religions, and we said the idea that, how do we know that the Torah is from God? And we just went through so many beautiful proofs, different types of, scientific proofs that the Torah is from God. We did, astronomy proofs, biological proofs, psychological proofs, archaeological proofs, prophetic proofs, Mount Sinai revelation, so many different types of proofs. Now, and going through the proofs leaves you with no doubt that the Torah was given by God and a human being could have never written it. And meaning what? That the only religion given from the creator of the universe is the Torah, is Judaism. Judaism is the only God-given religion, and I'm talking specifically about Orthodox Judaism, okay? There was no such thing as Orthodox Judaism until 200 years ago. The Reform made that name, but the idea is, that's what it's called now. But the idea is that, it's basically Jews who keep the Torah, right? They believe in the 13 principles, they keep the Torah, they keep all the commandments of the Torah, they work on their bad character traits, and they help others. Basically, Torah, we call it Torah Judaism. I don't like the word Orthodox, I like the word Torah Judaism. I'm a Torah Jew. I am a Jew who lives by the Torah. Okay, that's the idea. We prove Torah Judaism. Again, let's just call it Orthodox Judaism just for the sake of simplicity, because that's what most people are familiar with. But we prove that the Torah is from God. Now we're going to summarize all the different type of proofs. Okay, ready? Through all these proofs, we know that it is extremely likely that God exists and that He gave the Jewish people the written and oral Torah. Therefore, religions that reject the premise that the Jews received an oral Torah, including Christianity and Islam, who both only believe in the written Torah, the Tanakh, the Old Testament, aka the Old Testament, according to them. There's no Old Testament, man. There's no old. It's not old. It's still relevant, okay? But the idea is, according to the Christian, anybody who rejects the oral Torah, so the Christians and Muslims, they clearly contradict Judaism. Furthermore, it is understood that these religions cannot be God-given. Additionally, we showed that the Oral Torah, which the Orthodox Jews are the only group to fully accept upon themselves, contains facts about the world that only God can know. Many of the proofs given stem from the Rabbinical tradition of the oral law, the Mishnah, Talmud, and Midrashim. This validates that not only was the oral law preserved by God, but the Rabbinical writings such as the Mishnah, Gemara, Talmud were all written with divine inspiration, and the information within these books stem from God. Meaning that all these proofs, a lot of these proofs weren't just Torah proofs. These are also, proofs in the Talmud, proofs in the, in the Mishnah, showing that no way, even those books, the information is divine information. Divine means that it's from God. Also the information that stems from there. So all the concepts, how to keep Shabbat, how to keep kosher, all those laws were all passed down and eventually got written as the Mishnah and Talmud. So we believe the Mishnah and Talmud is God's will and way in the world, because that information is God's wisdom that got eventually written down. Okay, it is important to keep in mind that there are many more proofs that were not mentioned in this book in order to keep the book to an appropriate size. There's thousands of more proofs. This is not the only proof. There's thousands and thousands of proofs, okay? If you know how many books I have just on the proofs, just proving Judaism, there's so many books, there's so many proofs. Tons of content. All over, you could watch on YouTube, tons of content. You could see, just go to Jewish bookstores. There's so many books on these topics. In the back of Indisputable Truth, there's a whole a recommended book list, and you see books that, if you want more information on books that prove that God exists and the Torah is from God, you could see there. So as mentioned earlier, a person that can say that it was possible that the Torah just got lucky in knowing all this information. We could say, the Ippur Papyrus, it just was a coincidence. The Torah knowing the number of stars in the universe, that's a coincidence. That the pig is the only animal that has split hooves and chews its cud. That all these things we could say everything's a coincidence. Yeah. A person could say, it was possible that the Torah just got lucky. However, although anything may be possible, if we are truly honest, it is absolutely not probable that the Torah got lucky time after time to know all this information. Yeah, anything is possible. And maybe aliens came down. You could say all the biggest nonsense excuses out there. But at the end of the day, it's possible, but it's not probable. it's most likely if you have to put your money, if you have to, again, when we make decisions in life, like we said in the introduction of the book, we don't go off of, possibilities. When you're drinking the water from the faucet, you don't say, oh, maybe there's poison in it. No, you go on probabilities. There's most likely not poison in there. When you make life decisions, so when you make it in who you're going to get married to, yeah, is it possible you could get divorced? Yeah, it's possible. But you don't go on that. You go on probability, right? And anything, you go on probably not possible. Yeah, you could drive in a car, you could get in a car accident, but you still get in the car. Why? Because you go on probability. The idea is, just like everything in your life, you go on probability. Do the same thing when you're making religious decisions. When you're making decisions that you want to get close to God and keep the Torah, the same factors you do with other life decisions, do it here. It only makes sense. So the idea is, yes, anything is possible. You could say this, maybe I got lucky, but it's just getting foolish. After the guy, like we said, if you're rolling the dice 100 trillion times in a row and you're getting double sixes, the dice must be fixed. Yeah, maybe it's possible that you got lucky. Yeah, but we don't, when the possibility is 0.0000001%, yeah, it just gets ridiculous to say it was a coincidence. Yeah, so fine, we finished that. We're done with the proofs. Now we're on the section called Rabbinical laws. Okay, page 91. Very important topic. This is a big confusion among so many people about rabbinical laws and oral Torah. It's very, very important to go through this. Okay. All right, so let's read it. We know that, so rabbinical laws. We know from the Torah that God gave the Jewish people 613 commandments, mitzvot. Okay, now what is a mitzvah? A mitzvah comes from the word sfuta, which means connection. So a mitzvah is a commandment, but it's not a good deed, it's not optional. A mitzvah is an act, it's an action that connects you. What does that mean? It's an action that connects you to God. So think of, again, God's not physical, but think of, the 613 categories of ropes that connect you to God. And every mitzvah, you keep Shabbat, you have another rope attached to your connection to God. You keep kosher, you have another rope. The more mitzvahs you keep, and again, those ropes could be thick or thin. If you do, let's say Shabbat, you keep Shabbat properly, you learn all the laws of Shabbat, you're going to have a thick, strong rope, and your connection to God is going to be greater. But if you don't learn the laws of Shabbat and you just think you're keeping Shabbat or kosher, whatever it is, then you might keep some things of kosher, but the rope is very thin. And some people, they don't keep it, so the rope is cut, and their connection to God is, destroyed. But the idea is, these are 600. There's 613 commandments, mitzvahs, ways of connecting to God. Okay. So these are from the Torah, 613 Torah laws, meaning God told Moses, you want to wear tefillin, tzitzit, kosher, mezuzah, whatever it is, fine. In addition, a significant part of halacha, Jewish law, are the commandments that come from the chachamim. Who are the chachamim? The Torah scholars, aka the rabbis. Okay? And who are we talking about? Rabbis of the Sanhedrin, which was the supreme court. The Sanhedrin was the supreme court and legislative body in all matters of Torah law. Okay? Meaning God writes in the Torah, there's going to be something called the Sanhedrin, 71, the biggest, the smartest rabbis, the most, just rabbis. The Torah gives you the ramifications of who could be a judge. But the idea is, these judges, God says, okay, if there's a case and you're in doubt about a case of a Torah law, is this kosher or not kosher? Is this pure or impure? God says, okay, the rabbis of the Sanhedrin, if they make a vote and the majority says it's kosher, I rule that's kosher, because if they say it's not kosher, it's not kosher, right? Because God, that's how God gave the Torah. That's in the Torah. Okay, fine. Now, the rabbis of the Sanhedrin instituted 7 additional positive mitzvahs, positive commandments. Okay, so these commandments are called rabbinical commandments, mitzvah de rabbanan. So the oral Torah. So we said God gave the oral Torah. The oral Torah consists of 2 aspects: the Torah laws and the rabbinical laws. Now, the rabbinical laws are instituted by rabbis. Now, the question is, we're going to get to it, but who gave rabbis permission? But we'll talk about that. Okay? But let's just explain. So there's rabbinical commandments that the rabbis, these are from not the rabbis like of our generation, again, from the Sanhedrin, from the Jewish Supreme Court. You know who the Jewish first Supreme Court was? It was Moses. Okay, Moses, and then Joshua. We gave the list. Actually, we didn't give the list yet, but we're going to give the list soon. In the book, there's going to be a list in 2 pages from now. Now, what are the 7 rabbinical commandments that instituted? Number 1, saying Hallel. We know Pesach, we say on Rosh Chodesh, there's the idea of saying Hallel, okay? So saying Hallel is a special prayer from Psalms. Number 2, so number 1, the rabbis instituted the positive a rabbinical commandment of saying Hallel. Number 2, of saying blessings. So we know the only blessing that's actually from the Torah is Birkat HaMazon, grace after meals. After you eat 27 grams of bread, there's a special prayer called grace after meals. Okay, Birkat HaMazon in Hebrew. And the idea is that's a Torah law, but all the other commandments, the beginning blessing. So before you eat food, you say a bracha called, you say Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Blesses the bread from the ground. Sha'akol niyeh bidvaro, right? Borei prei etz, blesses the fruit of the trees. Borei prei adama, blesses the fruit of the ground. There's before blessings and, an after bracha called borei nefashot. And that's another after blessing you say after eating certain foods, whatever it is. The idea is those are all rabbinical. The only one is Birkat HaMazon, and some hold maybe ala mina shalosh. It's a special blessing, but I'm not going to get detailed about that. That's for another time when we do our halacha classes. Okay, so that's number 2. The idea of saying blessings. Number 3 is the idea of washing hands before eating, right? Nitilat yadayim. So when you do nitilat yadayim, before you eat, you wash your hands, yeah? That's from, now it's eating bread or eating wet fruits, nitilat yadayim. And number 4 is the idea of eruv, boundary on Shabbat. So there's something called an eruv. An eruv is something that allows you to basically carry within a, private domain to another private domain, okay? That's the idea of an eruv. And again, that's more complicated. I'm not going to explain the details. Number 5 is lighting Shabbat candles. So we know on Friday night, all the Jewish women, before Shabbat starts, they light 2 candles in honor of Shabbat. And number 6 is Purim, right? So the holiday of Purim is a rabbinical holiday. The listening and hearing the Megillah, right? Listening to the Megillah, Mishloach Manot, sending the gifts, Matanot LaEvyonim, giving the gifts to the poor people, right? That's rabbinical. And number 7 is Hanukkah, okay? The funniest thing is Hanukkah is it's a rabbinical holiday, and all the people who are saying, oh, rabbis made up the Torah, they all keep Hanukkah, which is very, funny. Okay, fine. So those are the positive commandments the rabbis instituted, rabbinical laws. Additionally, the rabbis of the Sanhedrin also instituted many additional decrees to preserve the original 613 commandments. So meaning what? God gave a bunch of fences, commandments that basically protect the Torah. Okay? So here are a few examples of some decrees that were made to protect, preserve, and strengthen the observance of the Torah law. Meaning God said to the rabbis, I'm giving you permission to make a fence around my Torah to protect my Torah law. So the laws of, Kriyat Torah, okay? Kriyat Torah is the idea that every 3 days, Monday, Thursday, and Shabbat, and Saturday, we read the Torah. Who instituted Kriyat Torah, reading the Torah every 3 days? Moses. Why? Because it was made in order for a Jew not to go 3 days without learning Torah. Okay? The idea number 2 is the laws of Yichud. Okay? I'm just going to read the footnote, but I could explain it outside, but I'd rather just read the footnote because it's summarized very well. Yichud is basically, when... Okay, I'll just read it from here. It is forbidden. So Yichud is the idea that it's forbidden from the Torah for a man to seclude himself with a woman to whom he is forbidden. Okay? So... according to the Torah, it's only with a married woman, so that's a Torah law. But then that's Yichud De'oraita. But according to the Rabbinical law, you can't do Yichud with any girl who's forbidden to you. Again, your mother, your grandma, and your sister. Sister depends on certain situations if it's longer than a certain period of time. But the idea is Yichud is you can't be locked in a closed room with a girl who's not allowed to you. It could be Jewish girl, it could be non-Jewish girl. It doesn't matter. If it's not your wife, it's not your mom or your grandma, you basically can't be locked in the room with them. Why? For modesty reasons. Okay. If you're in a locked room with a girl, it becomes problematic. Okay. So seclusion. Okay. Who did this? Who instituted this? King David and his court established an additional prohibition that is rabbinically forbidden for a man to seclude himself with any woman, even an unmarried woman. So the Torah law is a married woman, and unmarried woman is rabbinical law. The court of Hillel and Shammai extended this prohibition to include non-Jews also. Therefore, it doesn't matter if the woman is Jewish or non-Jewish, it is still forbidden to be secluded with them. Okay? That's the idea of Yichud. It's another rabbinical law, the rabbinical law of Mukseh. So Mukseh basically means set aside. It refers to items that may not be moved or handled on Shabbat or festivals. So I'll give you an example of Mukseh. Mukseh, the Torah law is you can't write on Shabbat. So the rabbis made a law called Mukseh, you can't even touch the pen in a normal way. You could move with your elbow, you could blow on it, that's okay. You can move it in an indirect way. But you're not allowed to pick up a pen normally. Why? Because the rabbis were afraid that if you pick up a pen normally, you might forget and write on Shabbat and violate a Torah law. So the Torah law is you can't write, and the fence is don't touch the pen in a normal way. Pick it up in a normal manner. Why? Because you might write. So that's called mukseh. There's other types of mukseh. I'm not going to get into that. But that's an example. Or the number 4, the laws of the prohibition of eating dairy and poultry, chicken, turkey together. Meaning, according to the Torah, according to when God gave the Torah to Moses, He said you can't eat meat with dairy. Now we call chicken meat, but chicken according to Torah is not real meat. Real meat according to Torah is like lamb, beef, cow, whatever, all that kind of stuff, bull, like those type of animals. Okay, and the idea is that's the prohibition from the Torah. So why can't you eat chicken and dairy together? Why don't Jews do that? Because the rabbi said chicken looks very similar to meat, to real like red meat. And the idea is if you eat chicken, some guy might be eating chicken. He thinks he's eating chicken and dairy, but he's really eating meat and dairy because chicken looks so similar. And the idea is he's going to violate a Torah law. So they made a fence not to eat chicken and dairy to prevent you from violating the Torah law of not eating meat and dairy. Okay, and obviously there's thousands of rabbinical, commandments, again, to preserve, to strengthen the observance of the Torah laws. Now, let's continue. Before we move forward, we must understand that what the word rabbi means. In English, rabbi means teacher, okay? And that when we discuss the rabbis of the Sanhedrin, we're talking about the great Torah scholars of the previous generations. Some of them were Kohanim, some of them were Levites, some of them were, judges, prophets, leaders of the generation, etc. It is important to know that each and every generation from the time of Moses had a Supreme Court. They had a Sanhedrin. The Torah tells us in Numbers chapter 11, verse 16 to 17. Okay, I'm reading the verse inside. It says that the Torah tells us that Hashem said to Moses, "Gather for me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be the elders of the people and its officers. Take them into the tent of meeting, okay, and have them stand with you. I will descend and speak with you there, and I'll increase the spirit that is upon you and place it on them. Then they shall bear the burden of the people with you, and you shall not bear it alone." Okay? Basically, God says to Moses, you are judging all the cases by yourself. I'm giving you 70 other people, so in total 71. You guys are going to be the courthouse, and the idea is you're not going to have to deal with all the cases yourself. There's, millions of Jews in the desert, and if there's cases of monetary dispute or any type of dispute, you and the court will determine what to do. Okay? That's the idea. The Sanhedrin's main purpose, the Supreme Court, again, Sanhedrin means Jewish Supreme Court, okay, Rabbinical Court. So the Sanhedrin's main purpose at the time was to assist Moses in leading the nation by providing guidance, leadership, and playing a key role in transmitting and teaching the entire Torah. The Sanhedrin consists of 71 rabbis, including Moses himself. Okay? Now I'm reading a quote from the Handbook of Jewish Law by Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan. In the footnote, it is preferable that the Sanhedrin contains Kohen, who are priests, the Kohen priest and the Levites as members. It is thus written, "You shall come to the Kohen priest and Levites and to the judge who shall be in those days." Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 9. Nonetheless, a Sanhedrin is valid even without Kohen priests and Levites. Okay, good. So let's read this. It is important to keep in mind that these were not ordinary rabbis, okay? Every member of the Sanhedrin had to be distinguished in Torah knowledge, wisdom, humility, fear of God. So they had to know the entire Torah and had to have wisdom of all fields, math, science, all fields of wisdom, astronomy, philosophy. They had to be humble. They have to fear God. The most important, be God-fearing. They have to be indifferent to monetary gain. They can't be people they need to be bribed and stuff like that. Basically a lot of them were very wealthy. They didn't have to get worried about being bribed because they had money already. They have to love truth. They have to love every single Jew and a good reputation. Okay, and some of them were even prophets. It is thus written in in Exodus chapter 18, verse 21. It says that you shall provide out of all the people so God's telling Moses, you shall provide out of all the people able men who fear God, men of truth, disdaining unjust gain, and place them over the people. It is likewise written in Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 13, "Take from each of your tribes wise men with understanding and full of knowledge, and I will make them your leaders." Since the Sanhedrin had to be competent to render judgment in all cases that came before it, all its members had to be experts in all areas of Torah. They also had to have enough knowledge of science and mathematics to be able to adapt Torah laws to all possible problems. Okay? Now, I'm going to read a footnote by Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan in his book, Handbook to Jewish Thought, that just explains that idea a little bit more. Every member of the Sanhedrin must be ordained following a tradition from Moses. It is thus written in Numbers 27, verse 22 to 23, Moses did as God commanded him. He took Joshua and laid his hands on him, commanding him as God spoke through Moses. What does that mean? He gave him smicha. Smicha is when God, God basically told him, I want you to lay your hands on him, meaning that I want you to basically give him something called smicha. Smicha means, I think the word comes from the word leaning. But the idea is, when you're basically putting your hands on him, you're leaning your hands on him, and you're basically designating him as the next leader. Right? So that's why all the Jews never contested when Joshua became the leader, because Moses, they all heard God speak to Moses, so they knew Moses is legit. And once Moses chose Joshua the next leader, Joshua automatically, because Moses is the greatest prophet also, Joshua already, he got the status of being the next leader, and no one's going to fight that, because everyone knows Moses is the uncontested leader. So the idea is what? The idea is that Moses laid his, so it says Moses also laid his hands on the other elders, ordaining them as members of the Sanhedrin. These in turn ordained others generation after generation in an unbroken line of ordination from Moses. Although Moses ordained the first Sanhedrin with the actual laying of hands, this was a special case and was only done at that one time. All subsequent ordinations were performed orally, granting the subject the title of rabbi. So we say rabbi nowadays needs smicha, but that's not the real smicha. Smicha, like we say, he took a test and then he knows that he's a rabbi. Real smicha is basically when the chief rabbi is ordaining you, right? So Moses ordaining, whoever it is, Joshua or the other elders. That's what rabbi really means. It means like your official teacher designated by Moses. A lot of people nowadays, they could have smicha, but they could only know the laws of kosher and not know any laws of Shabbat or any other fields of Torah knowledge. If you got smicha back then, that means you knew the entire Torah and you're a God-fearing person, you're in like the highest level. Okay? And declaring that he is, so granting the subject the title of rabbi and declaring that he is ordained with the right to judge cases involving fines. This is very small writing, it's just hard to read here. The idea is, if someone has real smicha, then he is able to be a judge in a court, and he could we call it paskin. He could rule on cases. We know that the greatest Torah scholars of each generation are automatically qualified for ordination. It is thus written, you shall go to the judge that shall be in those days. Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 9. This indicates that each generation has its own standards. Moreover, the persecutions of Constantinius, whatever his name is, okay? Because of the persecution of this, I think, Roman general, the Sanhedrin had to go into hiding, and it was eventually disbanded. Because of this, the traditional ordination smicha was thus abolished in the year 358 CE. The Sanhedrin and other duly constituted courts cannot be established until this ordination is reinstituted. The reason why we don't have a Sanhedrin today is because it got disbanded. It got dismantled by the Romans basically, and the idea is we can't, until Mashiach comes, we're basically not going to have another real Sanhedrin. Okay, so what time is it? Okay, let's go. Let me see how much longer there is. Okay, let's do like 6 more minutes and then we'll finish. The Rambam, Maimonides, Mishnah Torah tells us the chain of transmission of the Oral Torah. Okay, generation to generation, naming each chief leader of the Sanhedrin. Okay, so Maimonides, the Rambam, basically tells you who, he brings down the list of all the chief leaders of the Sanhedrin. The first in the chain of transmission is the greatest rabbi of the Jewish people, which is Moshe Rabbeinu. Okay, what does the word Rabbeinu mean? It means our rabbi. So Moshe Rabbeinu means Moses, our rabbi. Followed by Joshua, then the elders, the prophets, and eventually the men of the great assembly. Okay, in Hebrew, the Anshe Knesset HaGadola. As the Mishnah says, Moses received the Torah. So this is the Mishnah in Perkei Avot, chapter 1, verse 1. Moses received the Torah at Sinai from God and transmitted it to Joshua, Joshua to the elders, and the elders to the prophets, and the prophets to the men of the great assembly. All these great people were the leaders of the generations and were notably the guardians of the tradition, the Masorah. Okay, I'm going to read this last one and we'll finish here, okay? Realizing that the Jewish people were growing weaker spiritually, a group of wise elders came together who were called the men of the great assembly, expanding the Sanhedrin, the Jewish Supreme Court, from 70 to 120 members with a special aim of strengthening Judaism, okay? So let's finish there. Honestly, I'm just going to go back next time to that part and just explain that, that paragraph we just read. Let's finish there because I think we're going way overboard the time. So the idea is, we're gonna get in next time. We're gonna talk about why do we have to listen to the rabbis, like who gave them permission. What is the whole idea behind rabbinical laws? We'll go more in depth on that. So thank you so much for listening. And again, please subscribe, please comment, please share the video. And thank you so much for listening. Take care.